What if France successfully puppeted Mexico and the Mexican Empire would survive? Would Mexico be a stable country, or would it fall in bigger chaos? If we want to understand how Mexican Empire could have survived, we have to look on history first. In 1861, there was a civil war in Mexico, and three European powers decided that they will land in Mexico and collect the debt. They were Britain, France, and Spain. But France had different ideas what to do with Mexico. They wanted their sphere of influence, and eventually they allied the conservatives in Mexico and proclaimed the Mexican Empire. The new emperor of this empire became Maximilian I of the Habsburg-Lothringen house. France and the new Mexican Empire were then fighting the Mexican Republicans, but they failed. Napoleon III then decided that it is not worth it to continue fighting in Mexico because the Civil War in the United States of America has ended and the Americans could intervene in the Mexico. This left Maximilian alone in Mexico and he was captured and executed. The Mexican Empire then collapsed and the Republicans won the Civil War in 1867. But what if the Mexican Empire survived? If we want this to happen, we have to make several changes. The first one is that France brings more soldiers to Mexico and we will make Maximilian more conservative, because the Mexican conservatives who allied the French thought that he wasn't conservative enough. Also, the Mexican Republicans are defeated before the end of the Civil War in the United States of America. So I would say that Mexico might be conquered around the year 1865. The United States of America would be really unhappy with what was done in Mexico and having an imperialist European puppet next to their border. But they would not invade the Mexicans because they were right after the Civil War, so there would be some conference with USA, Mexico and France, where would be agreed that Mexico can remain an empire, but they will be constitutional monarchy with a parliament. I also believe that this would stabilize Mexico for the future. But now, we have to look on events which are happening in Europe. Russia begins its unification of Germany. War with Austria would start in 1866 and Prussia would win. I am sure that events which would then lead to Franco-Prussian War would be unchanged, and Franco-Prussian War would most probably end up same as in our reality. France would be defeated. This would shake Mexico, and I would say some French aristocrats and the imperial family would flee to Mexico, and not to United Kingdom like Napoleon III did. This all might help Mexico, and they would also slowly begin to grow economically. They would also get from the French sphere of influence. I would also say that American investors would also begin investing in Mexico, which would help them as well. This would continue until World War I would begin. The country would be divided between people who would support Entente and people who would support the Central Powers. I think the situation would be similar like in Greece, where Prime Minister supported Entente and the King supported Central Powers. The country would most probably be paralyzed to the end of war, or we might probably see something like the Zimmermann telegram, which might bring the United States into war with Germany, and it might even bring Mexico into war with them. After the war, some aristocrats and possibly Austrian imperial family would flee to Mexico, which would be ruled by their relatives. Because of this, Charles I, Emperor of Austria, would live longer. Mexico would after the war prosper until the Great Depression would come. It would hit Mexico really hard. Because of this, they would stay neutral in World War II, maybe declaring war on Germany towards the end of the war and sending some expeditionary force to Europe or to Asia. After the war, many Germans would flee to Mexico, together with many aristocrats which would be displaced from eastern territories, like Sudetenland or from Poland. Many people would also flee from the Eastern Bloc, and their destination might be Mexico. So Mexico would be a nation of emigrants, like the United States. In the Cold War, they would be on the side of the United States of America, and they would help them. They would be part of NATO and part of the West. There would be many languages that would be spoken in the country, like German, Spanish, French, English, etc. It would be similar to Canada, and mainly, it would have its emperor. This is all. If you like this video, you can give like, subscribe and join my Discord server. A link is in the description. Salvete.